Did you? No, I said you should, and normally it's at 7:05. So
You tell them we're
you
starting.
know those countries, you know the countries that have they have the half hour where they don't. It's not 7 or 8. They're by them it's 6:30 right now. This is I think in like between Nova Scotia and Newfoundland they have. I think Newfoundland has that. So some people, their clock is always at 7:05 is when class starts. So let me share this in two more places. Good evening, Jane. Good evening, Kayla Gittel. Good evening, all of you on Zoom. I'm just going to share this two more platforms, and we will get rolling. For those that have the Chumash in front of them, we're going to start today on page 232.
Dale, did you lose?
No, I don't think any of you won.
232. Sale just 233.
No, Mitchell's online, so Mitchell's not in person, so we don't.
But that's great.
I'm going to be there.
Please mute yourself. Okay, that's good. Sure. Good evening, Victor.
You're saying your brother is probably the dreams.
No, we're not touching the dreams tonight either.
232. No, that's not. That's it.
Which part? What did you say?
Sales Yosef.
No, we didn't. We're not. We're going to be before the sale. They're having their debates about what I'm going to discuss tonight. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are in a Rockin' Torah portion. It is Vayeshev, and it's the Shabbos before this. This week is the Shabbos before Hanukkah. Hanukkah is going to start on Sunday evening, and there's a lot of talk on Hanukkah about Judah the Maccabee, Yehuda HaMaccabee, and his brothers who were the leaders in the war against the Seleucids, against the Syrian Greeks. Antiochus Epiphanes, which means Antiochus the madman, because he was a madman, that was his title. Antiochus Epiphanes is trying to outlaw the Jewish religion. Most of the Jews assimilate and say, you know what, it's easier to become like a Greek and suffer than suffer the consequence. Except Judah the Maccabee operates a rebellion, but it didn't happen in a vacuum. Judah the Maccabee gets a lot of credit because he was the lead warrior, but he got it from his father. His father was Matisyahu, not the reggae singer, but the original one, Matisyahu, who was the son of Yochanan, the high priest. They were a priestly family. So there was an incredible relationship between Judah the Maccabee and his father and his grandfather and the values that they stood for, which led Judah the Maccabee to be the guy who was willing to take on the massive Syrian Greek army and defend Judaism. And I think it's important to have that conversation because often parents will say, well, I don't think my kid's really listening to me. They're not really paying attention. So I don't have to worry about trying to instill values in them. And the truth is, we don't have control over what values our children will end up with. But when there is a healthy relationship, it is almost, I can't say guaranteed, but it's almost guaranteed that some of the stuff that we are either role modeling for them or instilling within them will carry on with them. Judah the Maccabee wasn't 5 years old and suddenly he was Judah the Maccabee. He was a kid with a great father and a great grandfather who were instilling values in him. And when push came to shove, when his people were on the line and his faith was being persecuted, he was willing to stand up to them. And I think it's in that vein that I picked the particular part of the parsha that we're going to talk about today, because it talks about the willingness to incorporate honoring our parents to an extreme. In America, we were punished with something called Father's Day and Mother's Day. It was one of the worst inventions that America came up with because it basically tells people you can be a putz the whole year. As long as on Father's Day you buy your father a tie or slippers or cufflinks and buy him a good card from American Greetings, and on Mother's Day you wash dishes and buy your mother some flowers, you're covered. Look, I'm a great son. No, not at all. Not from a Jewish perspective. Sorry, you could buy your mother a card on every Mother's Day. And by the way, you should. Because it's just another reason to give your mother a card or give your father a card. But don't think that that's what it's all about. And even though honoring our fathers and mothers is a biblical commandment in the 10 Commandments in Exodus, and fearing our parents is in Leviticus. We're going to see it play out in the story of Joseph in a very interesting way. So with that introduction, if you have the Life Chumash in front of you, we're going to start at verse 12 on page 233, but really we're going to get to verse 17, which is going to be our kicker. His brothers went to pasture their father's flocks in Shechem. Israel said to Joseph, so Jacob says to his son Joseph, who already was on his brother's bad side because he had all these dreams, they didn't like him, he was the pet, he was the chosen one, he had the special Ksainis Pasim, the multicolored coat. He was the son of Rachel. They knew he was the most liked one, so the other brothers couldn't stand him. And now they had gone out, and Jacob says to Joseph, aren't your brothers pasturing in Shechem, which is Nablus? Come, I'll send you to join them. I'm ready, Joseph said to him, even though he knew that his brothers hated him. So he's ready to go. You want me to go? I'm going. You're my father. You asked me to go. Honoring your father. Goodbye. So Jacob says to him, Israel says to him, go now and see how your brothers are doing and how the sheep are doing and bring me back news. So I want you to go, check on them, and then come back and notify me how they're doing. So Israel sent him from the Hebron Valley and he came to Shechem. So he's in Hebron, he's in the south, and he's going north to Shechem, to Nablus. The angel Gabriel in the guise of a man found him. And look, he was lost in the field. The man questioned him saying, what do you want? Matavakish. So Joseph says, I'm looking for my, was that a knock?
Yes.
I'm looking for my brothers. Please tell me where they are pasturing. Right? So the angel Gabriel looks like a human being. He comes to Joseph. He says, hey, buddy, you look lost. Are you lost? He goes, yeah. I'm looking for my brothers. Did you see them? Are they out shepherding the flock? And the man said, the angel responds, the angel, 7:08, look at that, he 3 minutes late. You're only supposed to come at 7:05, not 7:08. He was on video. I don't know. Now he's confusing me. So the angel says to Joseph, they left here. They're not acting like your brothers anymore, for I heard them saying, let's go to Dosan. We'll find a legal pretext to kill our brother. So Joseph goes after his brothers. He finds them in Dosan, and that's where we'll stop. They saw him from a distance, and before he came near, they plotted against him to put him to death. What I want to focus on tonight is the conversation between Joseph and this angel Gabriel who looked like a man, meaning Joseph had no idea that he's talking to an angel. He thought he's talking to a person that happened to see his brothers. The verse says that the angel says to Joseph, I saw them going to Dothan. And Rashi tells us, and it was a little bit incorporated in the translation, that means two things. Number one, well, actually, Rashi goes backwards. Number one, they were chatting about traveling away from you. Doisan is they were looking for datot, dat, religion. They were discussing religious pretext, seeking religious permission within Jewish law to kill you. They were trying to justify, they were trying to find a religious justification to have you killed. So the first thing Joseph is told, by the way, your brothers, not only did I see them, but they're talking about killing you. Nichle dosis, the word dotan is not a location, says Rashi. They were having discussions of dat, religious discussions about how we can have permission according to Jewish law to kill you. And then Rashi says, but don't take away the simplicity of the verse. There's also a place called Dotan. So it's both. There's a physical, geographical location called Dotan, and they were discussing Nichle Dosis, they were discussing religious pretexts for how they can have permission to kill you. And it's a very, very important detail. Because if you read the verse without Rashi, right, if you were a non-Jew who opened up a King James version of the Bible, which is the most mistranslated book on planet Earth, clearly written by someone who definitely didn't know Hebrew, that's for sure. But if you opened it up and you read the verse, he met these guys, they said he met this guy. So first of all, you wouldn't know that he was an angel. Second of all, you wouldn't know anything about their pretext of what they were planning. You would just say, yeah, I saw them in Dotan. Thank God we have Rashi that gives us more information for what was really going on in that picture. By the way, I want to take a moment to thank Mick. Mick is, I took many. Mick is going to bring him home from Belgrade from his soccer game so that I can give class tonight. Otherwise, it would be very complicated. I'm not saying I wouldn't give class. Huh?
Thank you for getting
I was very grateful that he can do that. So now we have to dig into this fascinating Rashi. So I want to start with Nachmanides, Ramban. Nachmanides, where Moshe ben Nachman, the great Spanish Torah commentator, says that Joseph had no recognition from speaking to the angel Gabriel that his brothers wanted to kill him. In other words, Nachmanides says that Joseph did not know from speaking to Gabriel that his brothers wanted to kill him. Why? Because if he had known that the brothers wanted to kill him, he would have not gone. Because he would have not put himself in danger. So then what happened according to Nachmanides? When Joseph met this human-looking angel, he spoke in a way that it could be understood in two different ways. So Joseph said, well, he's talking about that they're in the place called Dotan. It's a physical, geographical place. Joseph did not understand the deeper layer of what the angel was saying, which was that they were seeking a pretext to kill him, because had he known that his brothers wanted to kill him, he would have not gone. His life would be in danger. You don't do that. That's according to Nachmanides. But when you study Rashi, Rashi says clearly, not only that he had to figure it out on his own, like Nachmanides says, but Rashi says that the angel literally told Joseph. He didn't have to figure it out on his own. The angel told him that your brothers were discussing of ways to kill you, the pretext. Now, actually, if you go to the Rashi in the Gemara, right? If you go to the Rashi in the Talmud and Sota, it actually says, it says it clearly. It says, not only does it say that Dotan is a place, and they also spoke about the pretext of killing him, the Rashi in the Talmud says that Dotan is not a place. The only thing the angel told him, the only thing that person told him was that they are trying to seek a pretext to kill you. They do not consider you their brother. They're not treating you the way you would treat a brother, and they're just trying to figure out how to kill you. So Rashi and Nachmanides clearly see a clear difference here with what Joseph knew. Nachmanides says there's no way that Joseph knew they were trying to kill him, otherwise he would have never gone. Rashi says no, not only did Joseph figure out from the angel's words that they were trying to kill him, the angel actually told him deliberately that he was going to kill him, and he still went. So then the question becomes, like many of the commentators ask, including the Divrei David and other commentators on Rashi, if you accept Rashi's opinion that Joseph knew that they want to kill him, why indeed did he go there? There's laws in Judaism about self-harm. There's laws in Judaism about suicide. We don't go on suicide missions. So Joseph knew that his brothers are literally a few miles up the block and they are planning to kill him, and they are seeking halachic ramifications, halachic permissibility to kill him. Why would he go? According to Nachmanides, it makes sense because the angel never told him and he didn't understand what was going on. But according to Rashi, where it was clear that he knew exactly what they were trying to do to him, why in the world would he go? So there's an incredible, beautiful halachic discussion in volume 35 of the Rebbe's edited talks. The Rebbe says it depends, this argument between Rashi and Nachmanides about what Joseph knew when is dependent on another very important argument, debate in Halacha and the Rishonim in the early stages of the halachic codifiers regarding self-sacrifice. This whole concept of willing to die to serve God. Right? I know in America you have people that are willing to die for freedom, for liberty, for
Trump.
You had to put Trump in the...
America.
The people are willing to die. It's very different when you're fighting for a country's survival. I think there are people individually that they have their values they're willing to fight for. In Judaism, we don't get to make up our own values. We don't get to say this means something to me, and therefore it has to be guided by the Torah. When does the Torah say it's worth fighting for? When does the Torah say it's worth dying for? And if it's not in sync with that, it's not a value we value. So there's a big debate in the Rishonim, in the early sages, the codifiers of Jewish law. You have the Rambam on one side, and you have Tosfos, the French Toseftis on the Talmud, of a different opinion. And let me share, then we'll go back to our parsha. Maimonides says, the Rambam says, in the foundations of Jewish law, talking about right at the beginning of Maimonides, in Sefer Mada, in the first volume of Rambam's 14 volumes of codification of Jewish law, there's the laws called Yesodei HaTorah, the foundations of the Torah, the foundations of Judaism. And over there, Maimonides says as follows: whenever it says that you are to transgress the sin and not get killed, and you choose to get killed instead of transgress the sin, you are liable for death. Let me say that again. In Judaism, there's 3 sins in which we say, if you're told to transgress these sins, you must be willing to die and not transgress them. Those 3 sins are idolatry, adultery, and murder. If someone says, you must murder this person or I'll kill you, or you must bow to this idol or I'll kill you, or you must commit adultery or I'll kill you, in those 3 cases you say, kill me because I'm not going to break those laws. But in every other commandment, it's called Yavar V'al Yaharig. You should, if someone says to you, eat this piece of pig, this piece of bacon, or I will kill you, halacha would say, according to the Rambam, eat the bacon, don't get killed. Because this way you get to live longer, you'll repent, you'll realize it was under duress, had nothing to do with you, and God willing, you'll be able to do many more mitzvahs in the future. In other words, according to Maimonides, it is prohibited for a Jew to sacrifice his life to fulfill a commandment when God says in that case you should not die for it. So unless it's anything, there's 613 mitzvahs of the Torah, there's only 3 commandments in which we say die and don't. I just want to mention for clarity's sake, so no one comes and argues with me later, it's very different when it's a Shas Hashmad. When there's Shas Hashmad means when there's a public, like for example during the Inquisition, when there's a public war against the Jewish faith, then even if they ask you to tie your shoelace while bowing down to an idol, you don't do it. Because then it's about defending the Jewish people's future. So when there's a collective target, when there's a collective bullseye on every Jewish person's back, because there's mass forced conversion to other faiths like during the Inquisition, then it's a different story. But under normal circumstances, someone walks over to you today in Walmart in Bozeman, puts a gun to your head, and says, Chaim, eat this piece of bacon, you take a bite of bacon according to the Rambam. But if that same person puts the gun to your head and says, bow to my cross, you say, shoot me, I'm never going to bow to your cross. He says, commit adultery. You say, I'm not going to commit adultery, shoot me in the head. He says, murder someone for me. Sorry, I don't murder, you can kill me, but I'm not going to. That's the only 3 cases. So the Beis Yosef, Rabbi Joseph Karo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, who was in the 16th century, he says that it seems not only Maimonides, but even Nachmanides is of that opinion, that Nachmanides was like the Rambam, in that you only sacrifice your life for 3 specific commandments. In any other case, when you're put under duress, you don't. Therefore, Nachmanides, who's of the opinion of Maimonides, will say that it's impossible that Joseph knew that his brothers were going to kill him. Because had he known that his brothers were going to kill him, even though he was going to fulfill the commandment of honoring his father, which is a very important commandment in the 10 Commandments, you don't die for it. So as much as Joseph wanted to follow through on what his father was telling him to do, you come home and you say, Daddy, I really, really wanted to fulfill the commandments. My life was on the line. I met this guy who we know today was the angel Gabriel. He told me that they're planning a pretext for killing me, and therefore I didn't want to put myself in danger to die to fulfill the commandment of honoring my father because there's too much danger involved, and I am prohibited by Jewish law, by Jewish values, from allowing myself to die for a mitzvah like honoring my father. But Rashi Rashi goes according to the Tosfos, the Toseftus, who in the Tractate of Avodah Zarah, and it's discussed in other places, that the prohibition, that the teaching that you should break the law and not die, that's a permissibility. But if you are a Jew who wants to be extra stringent, so taking our scenario back to Walmart, I'm not obligated to die, so not to eat the bacon, because it's not one of the three. But what if I choose to die instead of eating the bacon? So according to Nachmanides and Maimonides, that would be prohibited. It would be like suicide. But according to Rashi takes on the opinion of the Toseftus in the Tractate of Avodah Zarah, and they believe that if you want to be more stringent, it's considered a bonus. Meaning you don't have to die for it, but if you died for it, it's considered a value that is still considered precious in the eyes of God. Especially if it's in public. And you could bring honor to Hashem's name. You don't have to. But if you want to, it does bring honor and is considered righteous. Therefore, even though the commandment here was only honoring his father, Joseph was allowed to hear from the person, the angel himself, that the brothers are seeking a pretext to kill you and still choose to walk right towards them because he made that decision, according to Rashi, to fulfill his father's command, even if it meant his life was in danger, because he goes according to the opinion of the Toseftus, not according to the opinion of Maimonides.
Isn't it?
So why didn't the father try and protect him from being killed? He believed it was true as well.
The father wasn't there here. The father sent them on a mission.
So he's becoming a martyr?
Well, martyr is a word I don't like to use. It's a word connotated with other religions. He's fulfilling God's will, hoping he won't die, but if he has to die in the process, he'll go with it. By the way, there were Jews in Europe, not that, but there were Jews in Europe who died from starvation, even though they could have eaten, because they were not willing to eat treif. Now, most Jews didn't, and there's nothing wrong with the Jews who didn't. But the idea is not just a theoretical, it's something that existed even in the last 100 years. But here's where the question gets even more complicated. Right? Even if you take Rashi, what we just said about Rashi following the opinion of the Toseftists, the only way it actually makes sense if you actually fulfill the mitzvah. If you end up trying to do the mitzvah and you don't have the right, if someone says eat bacon, right, and you say no, at that moment you've refrained from breaking the sin, right? You didn't transgress. But over here, Joseph is going in to a situation where he's hoping to fulfill his father's commandment. What was his father's commandment? You remember what we read? His father said, I want you to go see how they're doing, how the flock is doing, and come back and let me know. So the command to honor his father would mean they'd have to go, get an observation, and come back and tell Jacob what he saw. Of course, Jacob never did that. Not only did he not come back, his father didn't see him for the next 22 years. So, yes, his father said, come back and give me the news, but Joseph never shared the news, and therefore, why would Joseph give up so much, put his life in danger in a case where he didn't even end up doing the mitzvah? So you want to give up your life. You want to go above and beyond. You want to go beyond the letter of the law because it's a mitzvah of God, and you're willing to put your life on the line. That's great. But putting your life on for a mitzvah that you didn't end up doing, now you're just the suicide bomber. What are you doing? You're putting your life in danger. You don't even get to accomplish anything. So there's an interesting thing. There's a teaching from the Kesef Mishnah, is one of the commentaries on the Rambam. So when the Rambam says that you're not allowed to give up your life unless it's one of those three cardinal sins, the Kesef Mishnah right there says that even according to the Rambam, even according to Maimonides, that you're not allowed to do it, they say as follows, and I'm quoting in Hebrew and I'll translate, Im hu adam gadol, if they are a big, great person, v'chasid, and a pious person, Yirei Shamayim, a God-fearing person, v'royeh shahadoyer paras b'kach, and they see that the generation is failing at this particular mitzvah. So let's say you were in a generation where you see that Jewish parents are not giving their babies a bris. And you say, you know what, I'm a pious person, I'm a righteous person, I gotta fight for circumcision. So the Kesef Mishnah says, and under those circumstances, when you're a righteous person and you see the generation is failing at a particular mitzvah, you're allowed to sanctify God's name, even for a small mitzvah, give your life up, so that the generation should learn to fear God. In other words, you need for lack of a better term, you need a martyr, you need a Pinchas, like we have in the book of Numbers, to say, I'm going to shut this down by showing them how it's supposed to be. Over here, Joseph looks at his brothers, and what does he see in his brothers? He sees that his brothers, and not only did his father just send them on a mission to find out how the brothers are doing, he knows something about his brothers that is not a comfortable thing to know, but he knows that his brothers are not doing very well at all with honoring their father Jacob. How does he know that? First of all, last week, last week, we read about Shimon and Levi killing the entire city of Shechem. Jacob was very unhappy. Actually, they didn't even ask his consultation. Reuven mixed into his father's sleeping order, which tent his father should be sleeping in. And Reuven was the oldest son. Joseph also knew that his brothers hated him, which made his father crazy because his father loved him. So he sees a pattern. Joseph sees a pattern of his brothers not honoring their father the way it would be expected for the children of Jacob to honor. They were good kids. They had a weakness, and that is they did not treat their father the way Joseph. And you can give a million explanations. You could say Joseph's mother wasn't alive, Rachel, so he clinged to his father. Whatever reason you want to give, you could say he was a daddy's boy, whatever. The bottom line is, his brothers weren't living up to the standards expected of a child of Jacob, a grandchild of Isaac, and a great-grandchild of Abraham and Sarah. And so, he wants to educate his brothers. He wants to educate the world, the society he was living in, about the value of how far we are to go to honor our parents. So he knows, according to Rashi, that his brothers are thinking of killing him. He knows that his life could be in danger. And he knows that he may not even fulfill the actual command of giving his father, right? If they kill him, he's never going to be able to give back a report. It turns out they didn't kill him. They put him in a pit and they sold him. But he knows. But he says it's worth it because he was a righteous person, as the Kesef Mishnah says. He was willing to go above and beyond because it was a Dor Poretz. It was a generation that was defying this incredible, beautiful mitzvah, and you needed someone to step up and show the world how much we value honoring our parents. Today, every little, I'm going to be careful with my words. I'm on a public broadcast. Every little cocker, every little, in New York, we used to say in 770 there were lockers in the shul. In the shul, there was locker system. You can keep your talis there, you can keep your keys there, and it's not like here. Over there, every locker had a lock. So they'd say in Yiddish, jeder Kacker hat a locker. Every Kacker has a locker, right? Everyone has an opinion. Today, every little kid walks around and says, John McCain was a terrible guy for this country. Abraham Lincoln should have done it differently. If I was around during slavery, and if I was around during this, and if I was a pilgrim, what do you mean? You're an ignoramus. And you weren't around. So why is it even relevant? They have commentary about all the generations that came before them. Meanwhile, they don't come to the piatas. They don't come to the heels. They don't come to the bottom toenail of most of the people who lived in previous generations. There's no respect. There's no understanding of the values that we get to carry from those who came before us, and honoring our fathers and mothers and our grandfathers and our grandmothers, those who came before us, is part of this generational education that is so valuable and invaluable for the Jewish people. My father's a Republican, I don't talk to. My mother's a Democrat, I don't talk to. What are you, crazy? Do you know that when a child's born, there's three partners in the relationship in a child coming into this world? You need a mother, you need a father, and you need God. Which means that your existence is courtesy of these two people in a relationship with God. But where's the honor? In our founding that we have this term sacred honor. Where's the sacred honor? Abraham Lincoln, what are you talking about? What do you know what the challenges the previous generations ever dealt with? Joseph looked at his generation, he looked at his own brothers, and he saw that they are struggling with a very important value that is a valuable thing to the matriarchs and patriarchs of the Jewish people, which is respecting the elders that came before us, respecting our parents. And he was willing to put himself on the line, not knowing if he'll ever be able to fulfill that commandment, so that he could educate not just his brothers. He didn't know if he would ever educate his brothers, but if everyone knew how far he was willing to go to talk to his brothers, to bring them the message from daddy at home, then maybe the world would learn how far we are meant to go with honoring our parents. Every therapist, you come to a therapist today, you say, I'm struggling. I mentioned to JLI yesterday, the two favorite words, toxicity and trauma. But number one, they figure out a way within 20 minutes to blame it on your parents. It's your parents' fault. They didn't give you breakfast in the morning, they made you pour your own cereal. That's why you have deep trauma. I'm not saying there are some parents that truly we're not good at it. But most people, your issues have nothing to do with your parents not giving you cereal and not taking you to Orlando. And, even the parents that hit you the way they used to hit kids back in the day, that's not either the reason. Unless they were a child abuser that beat you every night to a pulp, giving you a patch once in a while was not the reason. I got patches too. And my father did not give me any trauma. Well, Javier Deer, she'd have a few jokes with that, but and so we've gotten sort of this permission slip. The self-help books have given us all a permission slip that we don't have to treat our parents the way God tells us to. Or they'll say, they won't tell you not to. They'll say it's complicated. That's the easy way out of everything. Of course it's complicated. You know anything in this world that's not complicated? You ever tried filling out a form at your bank? And yet somehow the bank form you managed to fill out so you can get some money. Of course it's complicated to honor your parents. If it was easy, God wouldn't have to command it. But he's commanding it because it's a value that's important for generational continuity. Not just gratitude. Gratitude's part of it, but it's also for continuity. There are amazing things that those who came before us are able to convey to us, both through experience and through education. And if we listen, if we take the time to listen. Today I sat with someone, and for the first time, a man maybe in his early 60s, and for the first time he felt warm enough and comfortable enough, and he said to me, let me tell you a little bit about my childhood. And I had no idea. It's a very, very wealthy individual, probably one of the wealthiest individuals in the state of Montana. And it turns out I had no idea that until he was in his 30s, his parents were basically broke. Not because they didn't have jobs, they had jobs, they were just very, very poor. And that has sort of guided the way he sees the world and what he wants to do to help the world in a beautiful way, but I didn't know that. He doesn't walk around saying, my parents, terrible, because they were poor. He celebrates them for what they were willing to do while they were poor and how hard they fought to make sure him and his siblings had what they needed, even though they were poor. Where's that recognition? Where's that continuity? Where's that respect and dignity that the Torah talks about? Joseph says, I'm willing to die for this. Because the generation needs to hear this. They need to see it, that respect for our parents, not just fear and not just love, but honor. You shall honor your father and your mother. And specifically, it says your father first because we tend to honor our mothers first. So the Torah says your father. Our fathers were scared of more. That's why in Leviticus, when it says, Ish es imoy va'aviv tiro, you should be fearful or be in awe of your mother and father. It says mother first because we tend to be more scared of our fathers. But when it comes to honor, it says father first because we tend to honor our mothers first. But where is that? Where have we lost that? People joke with me, oh my gosh, Chaim, you speak to your father, you FaceTime with your father every morning? Yeah. It's one of the most beautiful things I have going in my life. Sometimes it's 2 minutes, sometimes it's 10 minutes. Today it was 4. And sometimes he gets a call in the middle and he says, okay, I'll talk to you later, boom, and he because it's FaceTime, he hangs up. So what? I see him every day. I chat with him every day. I listen to his guidance every day. Sometimes I actually pay attention and follow through on what he's telling me. Sometimes I think it's rubbish, but I'm paying attention. I'm listening. I want to hear. And by the way, if he was more open, I would hear. He's not so open. I have to pull things out of him, but I want to hear. I want to hear how life was in the 60s in Israel, in the 50s and 60s. I want to hear what it was like to be married to my mother for 40 years. I want to hear what it was like to fail in business and become absolutely bankrupt and then try to start over again and take 15 years till you start making it again. I want to know that. You can't do that if you don't respect those who came before you. And it's interesting that in some way Joseph accomplished what he wanted to accomplish, because what ended up happening? He ended up being separated from his father for 22 years. Why was he punished? Why was Jacob punished to have Joseph in Egypt for 22 years? Rashi tells us because 22 years Jacob didn't honor his parents. He was on the run going to Laban's house. So he wasn't there to honor his parents, Isaac and Rebekah. And the response to that, the consequence of that he suffered the same thing with his son being gone for 22 years. So in a sense, the world found out that when you don't honor your parents, there's consequences. So by the fact that Joseph went to his brothers, they didn't kill him. They put him in a pit, they sold him, and he was gone for 22 years. In a sense, Joseph accomplished what he wanted to accomplish, that the world should understand that honoring our parents is such an incredible value. And I don't want to, I want to go back to for a second. I know people that indeed had a very rough childhood. And the Torah says even if your childhood was rough, you still need to honor your parents. The only exception to that would be if they're deliberately, not well and they're trying to ruin your life, which is again is a very small minority. Abuse, but short of abuse, one of the greatest gifts Hashem gave us is the ability to have an incredible relationship with those who came before us and treat them the way they ought to be treated. My mother and my father treated their parents with such awe and reverence and respect. And I think that's part of the reason why my siblings and I treat our parents with such incredible reverence and respect. Not because I think my parents are perfect. Actually, the older I get, the more I realize they were far from perfect. But they were my parents. They gave me life. They were partners with Hashem to bring me into this world. They raised me pretty darn well with all their flaws. And they did the very best they could under the circumstances. And my job is to reciprocate the way Hashem tells me to reciprocate. So Joseph had to do it to an extreme because the generation needed that. But each of us in America today, each of us listening to tonight's class, cut the crap. I'm not interested. 99.9% of the time, we are meant to be fully honoring, respecting, and revering our parents and grandparents, and carrying the torch that they've given to us to the next generation because they have something to offer. And if you can't find what they are offering, then the issue is not with them, the issue is with you. And that's why it brings me back full circle to Hanukkah. Judah the Maccabee didn't come to the world in a vacuum. He came to the world through a father. When we say in the Al Hanisim prayer on Hanukkah, we're going to start Sunday night, we say in the days of Matisyahu, the son of Yochanan, the high priest, right? This Judah the Maccabee didn't come to the world out of nowhere. He wasn't created from an immaculate deception or concept. Huh? I know what I said. I said immaculate deception. He didn't come that way. He had two parents. He had a father, Matisyahu, who was willing to fight the Syrian Greeks for his faith. He was the son of Yochanan, the high priest. And when you have parents like that and you have a relationship with them and you carry that torch and you listen to what they're offering, you're not smarter than those who came before you. You may have more tools in your toolbox because we live in a different world. It's amazing how every year that I get older, now I'm 44, Baruch Hashem. I was actually today at giving blood today, and the lady said, "Oh," I gave her my driver's license. She goes, "Early happy birthday," because tomorrow, December 11th, is my secular birthday. And I was like, "Oh yeah, thank you." I tell her I celebrated my birthday on Friday already on the Jewish calendar. Every year I get older, I realize, oh my gosh, my parents weren't that crazy after all. Turns out that when you become a parent and when you get older enough, mature enough to see the world from a different angle, you're like, you know what? The reverence actually grows. I think about it all when I was younger. I think, wow, my father's amazing. The fact that he's able to start over after my mother was finished fighting cancer and she dies and he's starting life over. The older I get, the more I realize it's not just not easy. It's almost impossible to start life over like that. It's so hard, and yet he did. So what should I do? Should I spend my life focusing on his flaws or the perception of flaws that I think he has? Or should I focus on the fact that I was gifted with an incredible dad? Well, if I'm following Joseph and Jacob's line of thinking, the Torah's line of thinking, it's absolutely to celebrate the incredible human beings that God gave me as parents. And it is my hope one day, although there's certainly no guarantee, that my children one day will think the same. But even if they don't, doesn't mean I shouldn't give my best effort to be that role model to them, like Jacob was for Joseph, to instill the values of honoring parents. And maybe the way my kids will learn that is when they see, because my kids do see that nothing stands in the way of me having my daily phone call with my dad and the amazing relationship that Chavi has with her parents. And maybe that will be the ultimate role modeling for them of how we are to take that seriously. But Joseph definitely did his part, and each of us should do ours so that one day we too can live like Judah the Maccabee, carrying that torch, not just of being a warrior, the torch of principled devotion to Judaism that our parents instill in us, until we merit a time when the world will see this in all its glory, and not every young schnook will think that they're smarter than people that came before them. May it be speedily nowadays. Amen. I will wish you a happy Hanukkah. I do not think next Wednesday night we are having our Hanukkah bash here at the shul. So you're all welcome to come to Bozeman for the Hanukkah bash. There will not be class. Whether there will be class the following Wednesday night is debatable. So basically, stay tuned. And if you don't get an email, Eliyahu Elliott, if you don't get an email about class, you'll know there is none. So that's a good way to know. Sei gesund, be uplifted, be inspired, be illuminated this Hanukkah. 8 days of brightness until we see the lighting of the candelabra, the menorah, and the temple, with the third temple, with the holy priest lighting it again. Amen. Sei gesund. We'll talk to you later.